Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about why Week 7 tight end starter sits for the 2019 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about only the tight end position, talking about the matchups for Week 7 and my 1 through 12 rankings for the tight end position, my tight end ones. Before we get into that, let me remind all of you, if you haven't yet already, click that subscribe button, click that like button on today's video, click the bell notification button to stay up to date on my latest content, and also don't forget there are timestamps down below for every single video. Also, this coming Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, as I usually do every single weekend, we talk about fantasy football before kickoff, talking about injuries, questions, etc. So if you want to be there, that'd be fantastic. All right, going into Week 7, talking about the tight end rankings, always subject to change, but I think this is typically how it's going to end up turning out. Before we talk about tight ends and my 1 through 12 rankings, again, this is a shorter video, typically because there aren't too many tight ends to talk about outside of the top 12. There are a couple guys that you could stream here and there, but we're going to talk about at first the rankings, the matchups at the position, and talking about who really has the easiest matchup going into this week. It is anybody who plays against the Arizona Cardinals. Hands down, it is anyone who plays against the Arizona Cardinals. Thus far this season, they've given up, compared to the average, almost 11 more points than any other team on average, pretty much. Giving up 20 points to the tight end position in half-point PPR formats on a weekly basis. That is only a recipe for success for Evan Engram this week, a guy that sees so many targets when he is on the field healthy. Again, before the season started, I told you guys, especially for those of you who bought the 2019 draft kit, Evan Engram is going to miss games. It is just what he does. He will do it every year. Good for him. He missed the game against the Patriots. Probably wouldn't have went well for him either way. Coming back into the Cardinals matchup, has practiced fully thus far this week. This is going to be incredible for him. Other than that, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, on a bye week. The Indianapolis Colts get playing against Darren Fells. Darren Fells, a guy that has been able to put together some great performances as of late for the last couple of weeks for the Texans. Not a bad option. Moving on to the Seattle Seahawks. They get to play against Mark Andrews in the plethora of tight ends that team has, which is Nick Boyle. They have Hayden Hurst. They got a bunch of tight ends there, but Mark Andrews, typically the number one of the bunch. The Steelers on a bye week. We get the Kansas City Chiefs, who have given up a lot of yards to opposing tight ends. Getting to play against Noah Fant, really not something that I want to key in on. The Oakland Raiders get to play against Jimmy Graham. The Cowboys against Ertz. The Titans against Hunter Henry. The Browns on a bye week. Miami Dolphins against Dawson Knox. But either way, to give you some perspective, there are a lot of top-end tight ends that already, just reading the easiest matchups, they're already in the plus in my eyes. These guys are going to walk into great matchups and put together some pretty good weeks going into Week 7. Obviously, the tight end position, a lot of these guys are matchup proof. I don't really care that the Denver Broncos don't give up many points to the tight end position. I'm still starting Travis Kelce. That is a given. I just wanted to give you guys some perspective on how much defenses are giving up to opposing tight ends on a weekly basis thus far this season in half-point PPR scoring formats. Before we leave, I know this video isn't watched very often because typically people already know who tight end they're going to start. But for those of you who are spending your time watching every single episode and supporting the channel, I wanted to go ahead and show you guys some stats that I picked up the other day. So checking this out, this is really valuable in terms of the wide receiver, running back, and tight end position, and knowing why these defenses are so bad against them respectively. So on the very left, we have the teams from Arizona down to Washington. Then to the right of that is how many yards they have allowed in the receiving game to opposing running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends thus far this season. And next to that, the percentages is the percentage of, if I'm not mistaken, of the 100%, how much of those yards have been given up. And on the very right is running back touchdowns, wide receiver touchdowns, tight end touchdowns. So if we look at Arizona, and we're wondering to ourselves, why is Arizona so bad against the tight end position? Well, all you have to do is go and watch that game against Austin Hooper last week. The middle linebacker for the Arizona Cardinals is so bad. It's unbelievable. I don't even remember this guy's name because I don't even want to remember his name. Because if I start talking about him, maybe he'll start playing better. But he can't cover anybody. He's late to everything. Just watching him run around trying to chase these tight ends, he can't do it. There's a reason why the Arizona Cardinals have given up 600 yards to opposing tight ends and 7 receiving touchdowns, more than any other team by a wide margin, almost doubling the number 2 team in terms of giving up touchdowns to tight ends. Pretty ridiculous. Am I right? I mean, insane. But just to kind of give you some perspective for those of you who are looking for some stats, look at this. New England, New Orleans, the Jets, the Giants, Oakland, Philadelphia have not given up rushing touchdowns thus far this season. Isn't that an interesting stat? And all these other teams. But anyway, trying to give you guys some perspective. As you can see, Philadelphia gets torched by wide receivers in touchdowns. Washington gets torched. Atlanta gets torched. Anyway, hopefully this stat helps you for the tight end position and for your other positions going forward. This is for weeks 1 through 6 updated. So hopefully this helps you guys out. And anyway, let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about tight end, shall we? Alrighty. So we're talking about the tight end position and my rankings for this week. George Kittle's my number 1. Is it a surprise? Not really, no. George Kittle is pretty much a wide receiver for this team, and I'm going to treat him as such. Considering how bad Washington has been against opposing wide receivers, George Kittle is a wide receiver in a tight end's body, right? That's plain and simple. That's what he is. That's what a lot of these guys are. They're so athletic. They are wide receivers running around at 250, 270 pounds, just mauling people. It's absolutely fantastic. But either way, George Kittle this week has had 2 back-to-back incredible weeks. It's exactly what I wanted to see. I was saying it for weeks on end. I'm waiting for this team to go on a bye week so that Kyle Shanahan can reevaluate their team and realize George Kittle is the number 1 wide receiver. That's exactly what we've gotten, and that's exactly what we've seen in the last 2 weeks. Absolutely fantastic. He's going to continue to be great, and he's going to have a great matchup against Washington this week. He's my number 1. Moving on to Evan Engram, my number 2. Typically, you would think Evan Engram has the easiest matchup at the tight end position. Why isn't he number 1? Well, it's just a difference of opinion. It really could be either of them. Evan Engram could be the number 1 wide receiver tight end this week, easily. No, I mean, there's no even. I don't know if you can even argue it. Probably my mistake is having Evan Engram at 2, but I don't want to put too much in his basket. I want to be a little bit conservative, not automatically just throw him up there because it's an easy matchup, because there are other options. You get Saquon back. You still have Golden Tate in the slot. There are other receiving options, but still, Evan Ingram's going to have a great week. Absolutely ecstatic that he's healthy, ready to return in a great matchup. He's my number 2 on the week. Moving on to number 3, Austin Hooper. If not the most consistent tight end in the league right now. A guy that is seeing so many targets, producing so well. Last week, caught himself a touchdown, destroyed the Cardinals defense, and is continuing on his trend towards, tight end stardom. I mean, really just having a monster season thus far. Gets to play against the Rams. It is going to be a higher scoring event. It is going to be a lot of touchdowns back and forth. Defense is giving up a lot of big plays. And Austin Hooper, as of right now, is pretty much the number 2 receiving option of this Falcons team. And I think going into this week's matchup should be fantastic. As my number 3, that's why I have him there. All right, moving on. Ooh, what the heck? Moving on to number 4. Okay, we have Hunter Henry at number 4. What an incredible performance. Hey, he's questionable, lightly participating, might practice, to, hey, you know what? I just dropped 27 points in half-point PPR scoring formats with 2 receiving touchdowns. I'm a monster. It's exactly what we wanted to see from Hunter Henry. I mean, there's a reason why fantasy owners drafted him. We had him as a top 6 tight end for a reason. Because Hunter Henry, I mean, in this offense, what we saw him do in 2017, coming back from the ACL injury, he's a good tight end. They want to target the tight end. Antonio Gates was so valuable to the Chargers organization for so long. This is his replacement. And Hunter Henry, hopefully for the coming weeks, especially this week against Tennessee Titans, giving away a bunch of points to opposing tight ends, should have a great matchup, should be a great play. Again, these are guys that I specifically think you could play the top 6 tight ends here, top 8 potentially, in the flex if you're struggling. That's how good these guys are. And then there's a huge drop-off from 8. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Moving on to number 5, Travis Kelce. Like I mentioned before, I don't care who he's playing. Travis Kelce plays. The only reason I don't have him at number 1, like I mentioned, if you haven't seen the quarterback video, I have Patrick Mahomes as my number 5 as well. Why? I want to shock the system. I think I have Tyreek Hill at 5. I have Travis Kelce at 5. I have Patrick Mahomes at 5. I want to shock the system, and I want to see them all be number 1s this week. Hopefully, we're going to use a little bit of dark magic to see if we can figure this out, because Travis Kelce has not been to the scale of which we drafted him. We got him so early in drafts. He has not even come close to what we anticipated through the first 6 weeks of the season. There isn't much time left for Travis Kelce to catch up and try to attain the numbers that he had last year. but we're going to try to get back on track this week. He's my number 5. Moving on to number 6, Zach Ertz. Ertz, you get to play against the Cowboys. Cowboys have decent linebackers but can't cover. Heath Smith's going to try to cover Zach Ertz. You think that's going to work? I don't believe so. That's why I have confidence that Carson Wentz is going to be a better play this week. Zach Ertz is going to be a better play in this matchup between the two teams, especially with Dallas is struggling offensively without Amari Cooper. Zach Ertz is going to be able to put something together and offensively move this team down the field and get them into good positions. He's my number 6 on the week. Even though Zach Ertz, before the season started, was a top 2-3 tight end, these other guys above him, man, they've jumped. They've outdone their productivity and they've outdone their potential in order to jump over guys like Kelce and Ertz. This is the first time I've seen this in a while that I've thought about doing it this way, but this is just how it breaks down. This is truly how it is. Incredible players. All right, moving on to number 7. Another great player playing into a good matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. We have Mark Andrews, a guy that if and when he sees 8, 9 targets, he is going to have an incredible game, which he has a lot thus far this season. This guy hopefully is a 10-point average kind of guy with the upside of getting his 20 if he gets a touchdown or makes a big play. Either way, Mark Andrews getting a lot of targets. With Marquise Brown out, he becomes the number 1 receiving option, which is absolutely incredible for him. We saw a guy like Ricky Seals-Jones play well against the Seattle defense last week. Ricky Seals-Jones, in Arizona, did absolutely nothing last season. This year, until David Njoku went down, really was nothing. I think Mark Andrews is a better tight end. I think he's going to have more opportunities. And not only that, he's going to have a big week. He's my number 7. Moving on to number 8, Darren Waller, the guy that has just got paid. Ching, ching, ching. Darren Waller, a contract extension. Congratulations to him. Well-deserved. A guy that when we saw him in Hard Knocks, has had a tough life as of late. But hey, you know what? He is on the right track, sober, ready to go, playing absolutely out of his mind for the Oakland Raiders, an offense that heavily uses the tight end position, who is going to probably be missing Tyrell Williams this week, who has plantar fasciitis, and according to John Gruden, isn't getting better. As of right now, Darren Waller seems like the number 1 receiving option for this team. It's going to be the 1-2 combo between him and Josh Jacobs this week. I like Darren Waller this week at number 8. The only reason I don't have him any higher, he's got to score a touchdown this year. I'm waiting for it. Maybe this is the week. Moving on to number 9, Eric Ebron. All right, Eric Ebron, higher scoring event between two good teams. You are the number 2 receiving option of the Indianapolis Colts. Therefore, you will get a little bit of a boost here. Against the Houston Texans, I think this is a great matchup. I believe, in fact, that Eric Ebron, yes, he hasn't seen as many targets. He doesn't get as much work in the red zone like he did last year. But the offense is different. It's built differently, but still, they use 2 tight ends. He is the number 1. He is more of a receiver than a tight end because he doesn't block as much. And I think as an option this week, not a bad guy, especially coming off of bye week. You could pick him up and start him if you are missing a tight end due to bye week as a streaming option. Moving on to number 10, Gerald Everett. Speaking of higher scoring matchups between the Falcons and the the Rams. Wow, that one was tricky there, huh? I couldn't get the right R word out there, huh? Okay, interesting. So, Gerald Everett playing against the Falcons, going to be a higher scoring event. The Falcons cannot play defense, and Gerald Everett is not afraid of catching a couple passes here and putting himself in a pretty good position to have a great fantasy week. For those of you who picked him up last week and played him, unfortunately, that 49ers defense is not to be trifled with. And this week against the Falcons, far better, far easier, and I think as my number 10, pretty good option. Moving on to number 11, Darren Fells. Darren Fells, again, in the last couple weeks, 2 touchdowns in that one game against the Falcons. This past week against the Kansas City Chiefs, had himself a very good game in which he was targeted pretty heavily. Even with Atkins on the field, Darren Fells continues to prove why he is a better tight end than many are anticipating, even though last year the guy wasn't used very often. He was a blocking tight end for a majority of his career, a guy that played basketball at professional level in Europe. This is a guy that has the athleticism not only to block, but to make plays downfield, and that's what he's doing. He's my number 11 on the week. Moving on to my last option, we have Jason Witten. If, in fact, when Amari Cooper does miss this week, Jason Witten is the next guy to get that boost. Besides Michael Gallup and potentially a Randall Cobb or Tavon Austin, really isn't any other receiving options. Therefore, Jason Witten gets that boost. He is going to see more targets like he did last week. He is going to find more production, and he's going to be more fantasy relevant, even though he has been all season long at this fringe 12 to 13, 14 spot. Continues to have a pretty good carved out system of targets that is going to bring him a streamline of production, and he's going to be pretty good this week. Either way, those are my top 12 tight ends on the week. Thank you everybody for watching. I appreciate you guys spending your time here today talking about fantasy football and listening to my rankings. Either way, tomorrow we will have a couple more videos talking about tight end rest of season schedule in terms of strength of schedule and stuff like that. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But either way, thank you everybody for watching. Set your lineups for Thursday night football. Should be fun between the Chiefs and the Broncos. Either way, thank you again. And until tomorrow, I'll see you guys. Peace.